Dear friends, I wanted to record this intro to the following episode immediately after hanging up with my guest, Emma Garrett. First, I had to grab a tissue and wipe the mascara that had fallen down my face. I knew that I wanted her to be the very first guest on the Fabienne Show for many reasons. You know here that at the Fabienne Show, it's about having it all, whatever all means to you. It is about raising your standards, figuring out what having it all means to you in business and in life, and really how good will you allow yourself to have it. Emma came to me to work with me at Boldheart as a business coaching client years ago. And while she came originally to get to 10K a month consistently, she began having a powerful transformation in her life. She was in an unsatisfying relationship. And when I say unsatisfying, I am being very generous. And while she eventually got to 6 figures and then multiple 6 figures, she radically changed her life in the most inspiring way and really started to look at raising her standards all over her life. In this interview, we went there. There were some tears of joy, some really profound nuggets. I ended up talking about my past abusive relationships and talking about what I feel is necessary for every woman to do to increase the quality of her life dramatically and without apology. And whether you have your own business or not, and I do believe that every woman should make her own money and lots of it, even if you don't have your own business, I believe that this episode will be really powerful for you, an awakening perhaps into the concept of how good will I allow myself to have it, and how am I staying stuck and accepting what is in all areas of my life, even if it doesn't make sense, and how do I transcend that and make my life so delicious that my life is unrecognizable to me in just 2 years. And so, dear friends, I hope you love this episode. I am sending it from my heart to yours. Here we go. So, Emma, I chose you to be the very first guest on the Fabienne Show podcast. And it was in a divine download that I was like, who should I have as my first guest? And Emma came in and I was like, wow, okay. And so I just want to welcome you. I like I said right before we pressed record, I want us to be real and vulnerable and raw and transparent. And what was your response to me?
You called upon the right woman.
So would you like to introduce yourself and like how we know each other and what is the genesis for us being here? Like, how did it all start?
I would be happy to. Thanks for having me. So we started working together I don't know. It's been a crazy years. So we started working together because of your Boldheart Business Program. And why we're here, I would say, is that I got it. In 2020, I got it. I was driving into the sunset and on a trip out across the American West, and the dots connected, and it was like, I see the deeper reason behind why Fabienne is doing this, and I'm living it, and I get it now.
Do you want to share that with me? What is the deeper reason?
Well, as I see it, and this is something you're clear about how when a woman is connected to her, I'll put in my own words, her capital S self, her power, her knowing, to divinity, to her magnificence, She takes up more space. She is more clearly led. She is more powerful. And that it's a natural consequence.
Yeah. Like those words go straight to my heart. That is exactly the reason why I am on this planet. I know that. And you have made an incredible transformation in the time that we were together. And it really is awe-inspiring. And so do you remember, sometimes when I talk about myself in the early days of my business, I talk about little Fabienne, like little Fabienne, just like trying to figure it out as opposed to, who I am today, still trying to figure it out, but having accomplished some things along the way. Can you take us to Emma first meeting Fabienne? So like little Emma, or I don't know if that is even appropriate to say. Take us back to when when we first met. What was your life like? What was your business like? What was your experience like?
I remember the first thing you ever said to me when we had a one-on-one conversation, and it was in a broader group. But the first time you ever spoke directly to me, I had basically word vomited my mix of desire and mostly fear. And you listened and took the whole thing in, and then you paused and you said, "You need a new self concept."
A
Doesn't
new
that sound
self
like you?
concept. Guess what I found, Emma? Do you recognize this? This is a
No.
3 or 4 page letter you wrote me after after we finished our work together. Can I read the first few lines?
Yes.
It says, "Beloved teacher and model, you need a new self concept," you told me. Just decide, you reminded me. You are worthy of all the good in the world. You honored me. You belong here. You cheered me. What was the self-concept about? And I'm dying to have you share with our listeners today where you were, and then like what have you been able to manifest, to command in your life as a result of this self-concept, even though we were just doing business coaching together. Quote, air quote.
When we met, I was in a really, really painful marriage. And in terms of my work, I was certainly doing work that I loved, but I was doing it in a tight, gripping, overwhelmed, exhausted sort of way, where at the end of the day, I was like, and I'm done with speaking with anyone. I was being extractive of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was certainly in some big good girl conditioning
Mm-hmm.
and its manifestations. And I had met someone, or I had witnessed someone who had worked with you. And I thought, if she can do this, I have to at least try. And it felt audacious at the time wild goal that I think I only told 2 people was I want to make 6 figures working 10 to 15 hours a week. And so I was like, whatever the program is, I'm committing in advance to doing it just to see. I have to at least try.
And what happened in that program?
I had a holy shakedown. Because if money is power and we need to calibrate to hold more and more power, then our systems need to expand to have the capacity to hold more power. And truth does this. And I remember thinking in 2020, it was, the beginning of the pandemic, and people were really understandably panicked. And I remember, based on some coaching you provided, I just decided 2020 is going to be, specifically the pandemic, 2020. And, this could be very like rude or offensive for some people, and understandably so. I was like, for me, this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to me personally or professionally. And I opened up a Google Doc and I started collecting data of why it was the best thing that had ever happened for me. And I had this sense that if I were going to make that true, which I had already decided, it was going to be a life revolution, which it was. And my business exploded. I left my marriage. I moved to Brazil, and did a full like eat, pray, love kind of thing on the beach, which my business funded, and my clients nourished my soul with work that was joyous and easeful for me to do. And about a year later, I was living a life in love that was beyond what I had the capacity to imagine.
I'm covered in chills because I remember when the pandemic hit, everybody was freaking out about their businesses. And I remember just my role being like, oh no, we're continuing. And what if, and again, just to use your words, with no disrespect to anyone who has suffered greatly because of that period of our collective lives, I felt like my job was to give us all a divine redirection or something to hang on to. And I remember saying to you all, what if this isn't happening to you, but what if this is happening for you? And there is a silver lining on this incredibly dark cloud. And what if we were to follow that silver lining, that golden thread, and actually have it give us the permission to turn up the volume on who we really are, what we really want, what we desire, the dreams that we've been pushing down like a beach ball into the water, professionally, but also personally. I remember for me, I had already started thinking at the age of so I'm 53, almost 54 now. And I remember that this was a few years ago, just past my 50th birthday. And I thought, I can't keep flying to the US 5 full weeks a year. It was just so hard on my body. And I took a big leap of faith, and I used the opportunity saying, what if this was happening for me, to be able to flip all of my programs online? And I've never looked back. And, everyone saved so much money, all the carbon footprint, all that jazz. But so much of my role was trying to get you guys to do that, not just in your business, but in your life. And I remember we were on some Q&A calls, and you were, is my memory correct that you would be like in between like sailboat trips, and you were like, hello, bold hearts. I'm just touching down in here to say I love you. I'm here. I'm living my best life. I'm living my best business. And everybody was so inspired, and you really lived that fully, and you're still living it now. What were some of the concepts? Because this show, the Fabienne Show, is all about having it all, but not the concept of having it all that your regular masculine, competitive, accumulation-based society celebrates. For me, having it all, whatever all means to you, is about what is your delicious life. What are your values? What are your needs? What is pleasure for you, without the necessity of putting the words guilty or sinful before the word pleasure. And I'd love to know and share, and have you share, what is it? What were some of the concepts that we talked about in this air quote business program that had you transform your business, your revenues, your life, your love life, everything, so that maybe you can share some of these with women who are listening today, who are perhaps in a place where they're settling in their life, where they're walking through their life or their business, putting the needs of others first, living a life of obligation and thinking, is this really all there is to life? Is this really what having a business looks like? Because I'm not sure I want to play this game the way I'm playing it anymore. We'd love to hear.
Sure. So I'll certainly speak to those. And it's like I'm distracted by how alive this one part is, which is when you pivoted to go virtual, that first meeting that would have been in person. And I was not excited to do that. I wanted to be in person. And I really love the concept. I don't know where it came from, but the idea, certainly it's ancient, that true desire benefits everyone. And so I could feel that that was a true desire for you. And, I was aware that I wasn't on board. But then when the first time came that there was a virtual meeting instead of being in person, I softened my resistance and I said, okay, I can see how, what would be even better than being in person. And I decided to go on a solo retreat to this mountain town in Colorado that I'd always wanted to visit. There's a beautiful canyon there. Okay, well, I could take this meeting virtually in a hotel there and cycle this canyon, which I always wanted to do. And so I did that. And that was really a catalyst for me because leaving my environment, and then immersing myself virtually in a community of people who were collectively raising their standards and holding each other with open hearts to higher standards. I decided I wasn't going to go back to my life until I wanted to. So I promised myself I wasn't going to go back to my home until my body was a yes to doing so. And it turned out my body didn't become a yes to doing so. So
Wow.
the higher standards, and then you just choose. It can be so rude. Sometimes the most potent, life-changing, soul-serving things sound rude. They sound
Yeah.
rude. It's like you just choose. And so you really modeled for me that you choose to believe that you're worthy of a world-class life, or that you have a really effective process-led company, or what have you. You choose to it and then you calibrate up to it.
Mm-hmm. I talked about this in a recent episode, is in the concept of having it all. How much loveliness will I allow in? How much juiciness, love, fulfillment, abundance, joy, bliss will I allow into my life? And where do I stop and why? And I think especially as women, I haven't been a man in this lifetime, so I do not know, but especially as women, I believe that we are reared to put the needs of others before our own, and to cede and to acquiesce and to say, you know what, it's just my role to be okay with what is. And I think totally differently about that. And when we give ourselves permission to explore what would more look like and how good could I have it, and we raise our standards and we start setting boundaries and we start really playing this game of, and how else could it be wonderful, and how much more joy could I experience and then share with others? It really is transformational, but we do have to go inside and deal with the guilt, what I call growth guilt. Usually when I talk about growth guilt, I talk about women who are starting to make 250, 500,000 a year, 500,000, and then 1,000,000. Then they start feeling guilty because their friends and family aren't making that. But there's also a growth guilt that happens around having a delicious life when people around you are still stuck and unwilling to make changes in their tolerations, in their obligations. So you're sharing that it was the example of me just flipping everything online. What else? What made it okay for you to not go home, even though that does sound radical? What shifted within you as a result of spending this time together for a couple of years?
Really being with your question. It seems like it's kind of a piece of it is that when we start holding higher standards in one area or start telling the truth more to ourselves and others, then other things that were misaligned come up to be addressed. And it's as though divine will takes over. Something that's a greater power than you takes over, and it just has its way with you. You having said an energetic yes to it and starting to like remove these barriers. And it seems that it becomes a beyond you thing. And it's happening right now because I'm like, I don't even remember your question.
I was talking about someone is listening to this and she is realizing that let's just be pragmatic and practical for a second, because we're talking about the leveraged business program that you were in, and people come in and they're overwhelmed at six figures and they want to be at multiple six or even seven figures. They don't think they can do it because they're already overwhelmed. They're already sacrificing their life. In the pragmatic, practical aspect, not only did you get to six figures with us, but then you multiplied. But it wasn't just about the let's leverage your team, let's leverage your systems, let's leverage your time and your business model, though that was a big part of it because you live a pretty free life, would you say? Would you describe what your life looks like as a result of having the right team and systems, but doing it the feminine way, right? Where pleasure and freedom of time and location is baked into the cake. What does your life look like specifically? If I was to come and visit you right now, where would I be going and what would I witness you do from morning to evening?
I wake up without an alarm beside a man beyond my dreams in a little beautiful mountain cabin in near Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado in the US. That's during hurricane season, the hurricane season in the Caribbean. And when it's not hurricane season in the Caribbean, we're on our beautiful sailboat that friends and family and beloved clients visit us on. Every meeting on my calendar is like, yes.
Delicious.
Exquisite souls. My company is super, super lean from an operational standpoint. It's like my policy is that I don't want any energy that's less than hell yes to touch my business because it's sacred. So if it's less than hell yes, I don't want it. Like it's not allowed to be. And that means that the folks who contribute to the business, I utilized your hiring model years ago to be like, I'm going to be really real, level 3 conversation, as you call it, with a spectacular soul who's been with me since. And yeah, the policy is if you're a heck yes to it, then let's talk about this. But the bar is so high because that's how we do things around here.
Yeah. Are you willing to talk about revenues as a way to inspire a woman here who dreams of making more but hasn't experienced an increment, or she's experiencing perhaps incremental increases but not exponential? If you're willing to share, and it's also okay if you're not willing to share.
Sure. So I learned what's important to say about this. There's just something amazing about seeing someone. I feel like part of what I provide in this lifetime is the gift of people looking at me and being like, if she can do it, well, I mean, like I got to at least try, like maybe I can, And so like, yeah, there's like a different frequency one can get on. And when you have a new self concept, then you practice that we're choosing. And so we choose and then we calibrate up to it. So the version of myself that was committed to and believed in overwork and overwhelm was capable of a certain quality of life. And the version of myself that's like, I have a sacred relationship with my work. My clients are people I'd love to grow old with. I'm a servant to what life is asking of me. That just blows up, expands into a bigger thing than like clenched, overwhelmed. Well, someone who does my kind of work makes 40 to 60K USD as a medium, and that's that. Like that is just a different paradigm. So when I witnessed a woman years ago having a very relaxed, seeming, true to herself life and a 6-figure business, I was like, okay, if she can do it, I need to at least try. And I remember being in Mexico with some, chosen family kinds of friends and sitting on a patio overlooking the ocean. I had just met my love. And I was like, oh, I did it.
Yeah.
And I know that there's not an end to things. It's like, I used to be playing the game of how much can I tolerate? And so to shift into playing, how good can I stand it? How much can I receive? What am I willing to calibrate to is a different thing. And it's like market data is, like not relevant in that way.
I think you're touching upon something that I feel strongly about, and I want to impart to every woman who enters my field, is that the cards you are dealt, you don't need to play. If you've ever played poker or blackjack, you can pick up your cards, look at them, and take 3 or 2 out that don't serve you and put them on the table and say, dealer, I'd like another 3 cards, please. And I think a lot of people, women especially, just because of how we're socialized to subconsciously be martyrs, I'll go there and say it, because I have the privilege of having met tens of thousands of women who've taken the leap of faith and worked with me over the last 24 years. I see it again and again when they come up to the mic at my events, or they share with me in a Zoom, or they take me to the side at an event. They share that, it just is the way it is. And I don't believe in that. I believe that there are different versions of your life that you can choose. And this having it all piece is the difference between saying, dealer, I'd like 1 new card, 2 new cards, 3 new cards, or give me the whole thing. And we get to choose. And this idea of it starts with getting clear. Now we can get clear on what we want. That's different than what we have. But so I find that a lot of times women are not clear. We are not clear because we don't know how good it can be. So maybe we can get clear on what we don't want and then flip that around into the most delicious version, the opposite of that. If you don't like living at the sea, then maybe you like living at the mountains. Or if you don't want to work 6 days a week, then maybe you want to work 3 days a week, half days and things like that, and make multiple 6 figures or $1 million a year with your life back. So this idea of getting clear and creating that, you're calling it self-concept. I've been using the word self-image. It's like, who are you? And can we remove anything on a limited belief level, on how I see myself when it's just me, myself, and my own thoughts? And then, so get clear And then what would it take for me to align, just like you just shared, align how I see myself with that vision that I have for my life and remove the fear. Remove the fear of rocking the boat, remove the fear of people thinking, who does she think she is? Remove the fear of success, remove the fear of failure, remove the fear of criticism and humiliation and abandonment of whatever the fear is, right? So get clear, remove the fear, reverse engineer. What do I need to do, whether it's 6 months or 18 months, for me to live my best business, for me to make more money than I can spend, for me to be so blissed out, to have my business, as you're describing it, Emma, like delicious clients I want to grow old with, and only hell yes experiences and meetings on my calendar, and so much juicy time to enjoy my life. How do we make that happen in either 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months? And then getting in gear. And this idea of also being okay with not having to figure it out on your own. I find that a lot of people take on this heaviness of saying, okay, I should have figured this out on my own. And I think you're really modeling that sometimes you just put yourself in the right container with the right people and allow yourself. I love how you called me beloved teacher and model, Emma. That just those words. And every time you write something in a comment on Instagram, you're like, hello, teacher. Thank you, teacher. I just really, that warms my heart so much. To be okay with being in a container that allows you to be taken care of instead of taking care of other people. Would you like to speak to that?
I would. It's a spiritual concept that love is more powerful than fear. And so when we participate in a space that's calibrated to love, we can bring our janky energy, we can bring our fear, we can bring our dysregulation. And the container that's calibrated to your empowerment or to truth or to love or whatever it might be dissolves that energy. It's like it can't stay within the group. You can leave, but you can't hang on to it for that long, because eventually the more powerful energetic has its way with you and it dissolves it. It's like, isn't that so miraculous? It is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
And it's
I think
egoic to be demanding about doing it all yourself. It's egoic. The ego wants to be special and separate and suffering and isolated. And so it's charming and human and lovable to believe that. And it's like, no, you don't need to. You don't need to do that.
I think it's also a very masculine thing to the masculine as I see it. And I'm talking not about men. I'm talking about masculine energy being a really solo energy and a really competitive energy. And as I understand feminine energy, it is a collaborative energy. It is a community energy. It is a sharing energy where I'm totally okay putting myself in your hands as you are in my hands. And we talk things through with each other and we help each other so that we're not playing the game of Monopoly for one of us to win. You know, if we're like 15 of us playing, we're playing the game of Monopoly and sharing the little red houses and the little green, houses or hotels, or, here, take my Park Place. And this is what I know to be true in communities of women who have healthy ambition. I'm not talking about toxic or wounded feminine energy, but this idea of, I would like to see what I'm made of. I would like to see what the divine has in store for me if I put myself in a container of wonderful people and strategy and accountability and love that helps me move forward. What am I made of? And have everyone win. That feels like I experienced this. And if you're listening, you might not know that I have a mini documentary on boldheart.com. You can go to the top and click on the tab that says the film. These filmmakers came in to witness us and to capture the magic of what used to be a meeting when we used to do it in person. And it was this idea of we're all here to win together, knowing that a rising tide lifts all boats. This concept of we don't need to do it alone. We actually deserve to be in community to do it if it's the right loving community. What's possible for you going forward, Emma? Using these concepts that were planted in your consciousness over a period of a couple of years.
Most enjoyable one is that can be, and I imagine it will be even better than I can imagine at this moment. So there's it's just an exquisite thing to know. Like I can increasingly distinguish between some sort of fed to me societally or came up from my grasping fear brain, egoic goal, and a deep desire that's from something beyond me that wants to come through me. And I had no distinction of that in the past. I didn't know that was on the menu. So because I can tell, oh, this is coming from an egoic, fear-based, scarcity kind of place. I know that that's not what takes me to where I want to go. And so I have the discernment to not follow that, which means I free up a ton of time for myself. And so in terms of what's possible, it's like I'm increasingly surrendering to those scary, deep, vulnerable, expansive, soul amplifying desires, which inherently take me beyond what my mind can be like. Oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z, because it's leading me in real time in every moment. So a year ago, 3 years ago, I had no idea that I would be living this kind of life. It's beyond what my dreams were. And a year ago, I didn't imagine that this year I would be planning this like delicious, sacred opulence of beauty and simplicity retreat for clients that I adore in Mexico. Like I didn't know that. So what's possible for me is, it's beyond what I could articulate, which is a really delicious way to walk through the world.
Yeah. And I believe that the soul is seeking always full expression. And in a meditative moment a few weeks ago, it was like less than a month ago, the divine shared a message with me that said, Fabienne, drop the artifice.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! And I was like, I'm pretty transparent, vulnerable, and authentic to begin with. But the calling was to go even deeper. And I'll share some pretty vulnerable moments that came out of that. Big decisions in my life came out of that. I'll share those in future episodes. But this drop the artifice, the facet of this diamond that I'd like to share here is that as you're listening today, I want to invite you to ask yourself, in what areas of my life am I not being true to myself? Where is the artifice, the artificial, in the sense of where is my soul not fully expressed in my business? Maybe you're positioning yourself in your business in a way that isn't actually how you want to position yourself. That was you in the beginning, Emma, right?
I didn't know it was possible. Yeah, I didn't know it was possible, not just possible, but strategic, effective, and life-giving for all involved, for me to be in deeper levels of truth and to experience fear but to hold it, to practice the capacity of holding it in my system and increasingly attuned to whoever that quote was by, if you knew who walked beside you, you could not be afraid.
Yeah, I love that. And how are you not being true to yourself, let's say with your clients, right? Are they not the right clients? Sometimes we feel obligated because we think the money is there. Sometimes you smiled big when I said that, Emma. Is this bringing up something? Yeah.
It's just human. And it was a real wake up call to get honest about how people pleasing is manipulation and can really be an insult to the other parties involved. We think, or we tell ourselves like, I'm doing this for them or because blah, 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 whatever. And it's like, no, it's a disservice.
Yeah. And also this idea of where is the artifice in my life? And I don't mean the makeup or the car or whatever, but if I think back to, without getting into any details, the unsatisfying relationship, for example, that you were in or that many women are experiencing, whether it's their primary love relationship or other ones, why am I allowing myself to stay in that? I was in 2 abusive relationships in my very early years, and my self-worth wasn't high enough, cultivated enough for me to realize that that wasn't the best that I could get. I thought that that was the best that I could get. And so I allowed myself, as I talk about in my first book, I allowed myself to stay there. In fact, begging my boyfriend to stay with me after he cheated on me, after he physically hit me. Yes, I'm going there. And whew, it feels kind of strong to share it here, even though I put it in my book. This somehow feels more vulnerable. And to be able to raise my level of worthiness and dignity meaning being worthy of respect and honor. And so I share this because part of the artifice over the years in me talking about Boldheart was to say, you can make so much money and even you can get your time back. And, that's what the book is. Like, how do you reach 7 figures and gain your life back? But this piece, Emma, I think if I'm being really honest, having you here as my first guest in this is almost a coming out party for me to say, I know that there's a part of me that is worried about this isn't just about the money or just about getting your life back. This is also about like, how delicious can your life be? And perhaps there will be people who will judge and criticize and say, oh, this sounds too woo-woo. Like, isn't she more of a serious business coach? I'm being super vulnerable here. And yes, I help people get all those amounts of money and all of that, but I don't actually think that's the full gift. And if you're just listening to this and you're not actually watching this on YouTube, Emma just did kind of a dance, a silent dance. And this idea of really pushing it. If, I've been in all the guys' masterminds and I learned so much, but there was never an emphasis on how delicious can your life be, other than talking about how many Italian sports cars we can have in our garage or flying first class. I mean, not first class, private and all of that. This idea of normalizing that we can be super successful in business, whatever that means for us, but doing it in the most authentic version of who we are and growing personally to the point where we're pinching ourselves and saying, is this really my life? Is this really the new me? And also saying, in 3 years, it'll be even more delicious. And I don't even know what that's going to look like yet. So at the risk of sounding too woo-woo, that's what I do. And that's what brings me joy. And that's why I had you here, Emma. And I really the word that just came in was, even though I've never walked the Camino, I was like, thanks for walking this Camino with me of growing your business and giving yourself permission to be your most authentic version of yourself unapologetically. It takes a bold heart, takes bravery, it takes courage to want more, but not from that ego place you were just talking about. What are your thoughts about all of that?
Thank you for going first.
Woo!
Yeah, Fabienne. I didn't tell you this. In 2020, I read your book. Fabienne wrote a book for her daughter, and I read Embrace Your Magnificent Self. And thank you for sharing in that book, and then now here, about having been in abusive relationships in the past, because I read that and I saw the delta in your life for the kind of marriage that you have and life that you have. And it was like, wow, if that much of a change is possible for her, something is definitely possible for me. I have to walk this path. And I read that book and learned of your story in the fall of 2020. And I set a new standard for my romantic relationship, which was a world-class relationship with my best friend, lover, life and business partner. And it was like, it's that, or I'll be single. I'll be happily single the rest of my life, or it's going to be that. That's the bar. And so to set that kind of bar, while also with non-attachment, we're not guaranteed of how anything's going to turn out, but to calibrate to that kind of bar while having cultivated a business that I could joyously operate while healing and growing and expanding and spending half of my day on the beach in Brazil and half my day working in a beach house. That deeper thing is it. Thank you.
You're welcome. That deeper thing is it. And there's really, it's only a mental construct that we should settle for anything less than absolutely everything. And I just want to put into this space also that we don't have to be a B word about it.
You know, to be a what about it?
The B word.
Oh.
You know how some women feel that they need to put on a certain persona to have it all? How about we actually do the opposite and take off the mask and open up our rib cage and show our heart and be the most authentic version of who we really are on a soul level, quirks and all, right? And I think it all starts with self-acceptance, that if we can accept ourselves, quirks and all, that's when we can strive, attempt, wish for, go towards more abundance. You might have heard me talk about the book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. I especially love chapter 14, which is called The Impression of Increase. And while I really love the whole chapter, which is like seriously a page and a half, you can find it online. I love the idea of being the person who is always advancing. So like what you said, like what does 3 years look like? 3 years from now look like? But also the piece that I love the most is that advancing person that advances all others that she's with generosity, with here, use this, with here, grab my hand, let's go forward. And so in your willingness to be here today with me, Emma, I feel like you are that advancing person who is taking all of our listeners today by the hand and saying, come on, let's go. There's more for you. And it will be so delicious. And let's drop the fear and let's reverse engineer and let's get in gear. Do you have any parting words that you'd like to share? Because I could honestly stay here for another 3 hours with you.
When you spoke that, I just kept hearing let's go in different language. Vamos, andiamo. Like, yes, let's do it. Let's go. Let's go. And it's like, let's be taken. Let's allow ourselves to be taken by something beyond us. And thank you for what a teacher and model you have been to me in holding high standards with grace. Really high standards, solid boundaries enables our hearts to be opening the rib cage, as you said. It enables us to hold our boundaries with grace rather than with closure and force. It's like those really high standards, high backing, solid boundaries. I really get how that unlocks more love and creativity and flow and courage. Thank you.
Thank you for seeing me. I don't know how we can follow that beautiful share at the end. Thank you, Emma, for being the example of a bold-hearted woman, my favorite kind of woman. And I know the best is yet to come for you. And then again, and then again. And I will continue to champion you and root for you and send you so much light and love and sparkles and sprinkles from where I am. Thanks for sharing of your heart today.
Received. Thank you, Fabienne.
And thanks everybody for joining us. It was great to have you here with us. Lots of love.